let me take you first through some past initiatives which have been there and some current, and then move on to the future, which of course is most important. As we look at financial planning, we see that in the 1980s financial planning started in the Netherlands and was brought over from the US. In the US we have been seeing this for more than 2 decades. It started in the early 70s, late 60s. And what was most important is that advice was given looking at the entire situation of people. And that was kind of new, and that was also kind of new in the Netherlands, say in the late 1980s. And first of all, it was used for private banking clients. There were 2 banks involved, AMRO Bank, you may know it now as ABN AMRO, and Van Lanschot, who dealt with it. And later on, in the next decade, in the 1990s, financial planning was more and more widely spread. So not only the private banks were involved, but also the retail banks and insurance agents and what was becoming known as financial planners and independent financial advisors, so the IFAs. I've also mentioned some other institutions which have to do with financial literacy as well and have to do with some sort of financial planning, and that's Nibud, this one, and the Consumentenbond. They deal with budget planning, and they've dealt so for the last, well, I think 30 years, and they try to make people more aware of how their financial situation is. Let's move on to current and future initiatives. In the 2000s we saw that financial planning as a profession became more and more known, became more and more organized. And I mentioned 3 organizations which are important. That's the VFFP, it's a group of professional financial planners in the Netherlands. It works on a national level. And of course what is important, that's what you see today here as well, is that we work together in an international atmosphere. So we also adopted another organization, it's FPA. The letters stand for Financial Planners Association. It started in the United States in the 1990s and was a merger between 2 other organizations. And it moves on, it spreads along the world. So it also started in the Netherlands. I think it started in 2000. And well, what important is that working together as countries is important to get people more literate and to get people more in control of their own situation. The third here is the Stichting Persoonlijke Financiën. I'm the chair of that organization, and it provides education and networking opportunities and also education for consumers. There are in fact 4 levels. We have continuing educations. For the professional we have an annual convention which started in the Netherlands in 1999. And we brought it over to Belgium as well. So from 2008 on, it's also organized here. Professional newsletter, because what we believe is the information at first should be dealt with and spread among professionals. They can spread the word further on, but you have to start somewhere. And there you see the last bit, and perhaps the most important bit, is the consumer. To educate the consumer, it's a big effort to be taken, and we started that with a magazine, Ventura magazine, in the Netherlands. We are planning to launch it next year in Belgium, so that's also the column where we see here education on an ongoing basis for professionals. Information is also brought further on to the consumer. But there's more. Robert already mentioned it. View on cash. What we see in the last, well, say 2 to 3 years is that communication technology is becoming more and more important. And people are more used to the use of computers. Therefore, we see what we call a level playing field for everyone. That when computers are available, we can use the internet more and more. There are 2 new tools. One is first a free tool for budgeting, View on Cash. And the second is a professional guidance tool. It's called Havanadu. Havanadu is what we can can say a web-based access tool, 24 hours a day, and what is important is that it's a mixture in communication between a client and an advisor. There is a strong cooperation between the two. So we see some investment platforms on the internet which are only for its own use, but we believe that together with the advisor it is the best way to make people literate. What Havanadoo does, it gives a direct insight into the financial position. So some people of you mentioned that they're having financial plans made every year. That's only a few people, and we hope that Havanadoo will bring more people to that effect. So what you own and what you owe and the income and outflows, all those things are on this platform. But they're also in direct contact with the advisor. The fact that this is on the internet and it's accessible 24 hours a day makes it the more easier for the advisor to get involved. And it makes it more easier for the client to get the advisor involved and to use that knowledge. It gives answers to actual questions, as I mentioned here. Well, you can think of all kinds of life events that take place. A new home, which I mentioned here, a new business, marriage, divorce, whatever. All kinds of beautiful events, or not so beautiful events. They need advice. But they don't need an advice that is singled out. It always has to be an advice that is brought into the entire situation of the client. The entire financial, business and personal situation. A financial plan does that. But Havanadoo brings another dimension to it, and that's direct access. You may wonder, how on earth do people get to this name? Havanadoo. Is it some kind of African talk or whatever? Well, I'll explain it to you. Don't forget it, and after today you won't forget it. Because Havanadoo is from the 4 words that matter in financial planning and in financial control, and we take the 2 first letters of each word. So, Havanadoo stands for have, want, need, and do, and have is what you own and what you owe. Your private balance sheet. That's the have part. The want part is perhaps the most important. What your life goals are, your dreams, what you want to achieve. The need is actually the first one to do, because you want to avoid risks in order to achieve your dreams. So it's very important to have some disability income insured, for instance. And the last part, the do. How many of you have taken out financial plans and put them into a drawer and have not looked at it for a year? There's too many people doing that. The do part is, of course, in Havanadoo actually monitored. When you have this access with your advisor and you say, well, you should do this and that, the advisor can check in a week or 2. What I have experienced, I'm a financial planning professional myself. What I've experienced with the do part is that, well, some actions are ready to be taken, but one thing that's always put into a drawer is to change your will or whatever. People don't like to talk about that. So, in this part, we can monitor it very well. Okay, I'll move on to View and Cash. 2 initiatives. The one is Havanadoo, advisor and client together. The other one, View and Cash, is a more simple approach. It's a free tool. You can all access it in a few days. And it's a free tool to make clear what your bank balance is all about. And when you have only one bank account, it shouldn't be too difficult. But if you have more than one, it might be some kind of, well, I won't say a mess, but it won't be all that clear. What does View and Cash do? First of all, it shows cash in, cash out. Nothing less, nothing more. It shows how much money flows into your household, and more important, how much money goes out of you. It combines all your bank statements. It categorizes, and we should emphasize this, it categorizes your expenses. And that's important to control your budget, to get insight. And of course, well, shortfalls and surpluses. Second, we now have an absolute view of what we are spending and what we are gaining. Second is it compares your spending behavior to others. And that might also give a clear insight. If a whole group, I've mentioned here an age group, if a whole group spends 20% of its income on housing or on groceries, and you spend the double of that amount, you might start questions. And starting to ask questions to yourself is the start of getting insight and doing something about it. And third, the control part. The first one shows you in absolute terms what you're doing. The second one in relative terms, so in comparison to others. And the third one enables you to control your budget, to set limits, which is very important, to set goals and monitor these. Well, we have a little film, and now I have to ask Robert to give some assistance. And you're going to meet Jack